My boyfriend is very energetic, what will be the experience? Shen Ruojing woke up slowly, thinking of the fierce battle last night. She had a little headache. Who would have thought that a man who was so beautiful would have such amazing physical strength? It seems like a tireless night, several times. Are you too excited about the successful proposal last night? She sat up from the big bed in the hotel and found that Chu Sichen was not in the room. Shen Ruojing picked up the phone to find his number and dialed it. She felt that it was necessary to discuss the issue of temperance with him, but a sudden voice came from the phone, which made her heart sink. Hello, the number you dialed is empty. Chu Sichen disappeared. Shen Ruojing went to all the places where he could appear, but no one saw him. She was worried about whether he had encountered an accident, and finally chose to call the police, but the investigation result was there is no such person. Whether it was the work address he once said, or his home address, or even the hotel room opening records and surveillance video last night, there is no trace of him. He disappeared out of thin air, like never before. Shen Ruojing even had a ridiculous idea. Could it be that this half-year love is just her dream? But soon she found out she was pregnant. There was an uproar in the Shen family, and Mrs. Shen was even more furious. She kicked her and her parents out of the house and removed her name from the family tree. In just 1 month, she changed from a high-ranking eldest lady of the Shen family to a well-known abandoned wife. 5 years later, Intercontinental Shi Mao. Who? Shen Ruojing came speeding on an old motorcycle, stopped at the door, and supported the body with her long legs. 5-year-old Chu Tianyi jumped out of the back seat skillfully. He took off his small helmet, scratched his naturally curly hair, his quirky eyes were full of excitement. Mommy, are you sure Dad is here? Okay. Shen Ruojing also took off her helmet. She was wearing loose clothes and her long hair was tied at will. Her bright and beautiful features were shrouded in a lazy and alienated temperament, which seemed out of tune with the dazzling clothes in the lobby. Today is the birthday of the old lady of the Chu family, the first wealthy family, and a huge birthday banquet is being held inside. The people who come are either rich or expensive. Since she was kicked out of the Shen family, she has never attended such a banquet again. However, an hour ago, she suddenly received an anonymous email containing the latest financial news with the title, Chu Sichen, the heir of the first consortium, returns to China to celebrate her mother's birthday. The photo was taken at the airport. The man was wearing a black suit. His tall and straight posture made the whole airport eclipsed. It was her boyfriend who claimed to be ordinary. Shen Ruojing parked the car and brought Chu Tianyi into the lobby when a surprised voice suddenly came, "Look! Isn't this the eldest lady of the Shen family who was kicked out of the house?" 7 or 8 wealthy family daughters surrounded Lin Wanru and stood not far away. Her voice was stunned. "Shen Ruojing, why are you here?" Shen Ruojing lowered her eyes and asked lightly, "Why can't I be here?" As soon as these words came out, someone immediately reprimanded, "Shen Ruojing, how do you talk to Miss Lin? Do you think you are still the eldest miss of the Shen family who is on an equal footing with Miss Lin? Although you and Miss Lin were once called Haikan Chuangshu, but now you are not even worthy to carry Miss Lin's shoes." "That's right, Miss Lin is attracted to Mrs. Chu, and she is about to get engaged to young Master Chen." Shen Ruojing was slightly taken aback. "Chu Sichen? Can you mention the name of Master Chen? What are you?" "Back then, I had with several wild men at the same time. After giving birth, I didn't know who the father of the child was. Look at what you're wearing, you can't even afford a downright dress. It's shameless, Shen Ruotong, your Shen family education really needs to be strengthened." Shen Ruotong is Shen Ruojing's cousin and is also among the wealthy daughters. She was embarrassed, and angrily rushed to Shen Ruojing and cursed, "Shen Ruojing, do you still have self-knowledge? A remnant who was kicked out of the house, dare to come here? Hurry up, don't be ashamed here, and I will make a fool of yourself with you." Shen Ruojing's eyes flashed with sarcasm. In the past, she was clearly a victim, but she didn't know who turned the black and white outside, which made her reputation discredited and became a that everyone avoided. This is the case with outsiders, but relatives who know the inside story are also ruthless. She didn't want to care about anyone who didn't care, but Chu Tianyi couldn't let mommy suffer this kind of grievance. The little man stood behind her and said softly, "Mummy, what do I say? The smell of the sea, it turns out that this group of people is full of water." Shen Ruotong was furious. "Little wild species, who are you scolding? Come out to me." Seeing that a commotion was about to start, Lin Wanru suppressed the shock in her heart and said, "Okay. As the future daughter-in-law that Mrs. Chu likes, she is in charge of the reception today, and it is her responsibility to have any problems in the public eye." She stared at Shen Ruojing. "Vulgar. Don't let her appear at the Chu family banquet." Lin Wanru clenched her fingers, and suddenly said kindly, "Miss Shen, have you brought any gift money? If you want to be seated, only invitations are not enough, you have to pay gift money." Shen Ruojing was a little stunned. "What gift money? You may not have attended the banquet for too long, and you don't understand the rules of the Chu family." Lin Wanru said in a voice, "Mrs. Chu loves money by nature. She only accepts cash and no gifts for her birthday banquet, so there is an unwritten rule at the banquet. Sit a table for the millionaire. Sit at a table with a gift of tens of millions. Miss Shen, how much do you give as a gift?" The rest also mocked. The Chu family's banquet is not something that all cats and dogs can attend. She also brings a little wild breed. It's ridiculous, shouldn't she come to find Dad? "Miss Lin, you are too soft-hearted, you can just ask the security guard to beat her out." Lin Wanru showed a triumphant smile. "Miss Shen, if you don't bring any money, you should leave quickly, otherwise it will be bad if you get kicked out." While everyone was waiting to see the joke, they saw Shen Ruojing hooked her lips suddenly, and pushed Chu Tianyi, who was watching the excitement behind him, to the butler. "Please ask the old lady, which table is the grandson to sit at?" The scene suddenly fell into a strange silence. Everyone looked at Chu Tianyi in amazement. The little guy is exquisite and beautiful, and the big phoenix eyes with slightly raised eyes are exactly the same as the young masters of the Chu family. Is this child really the blood of the Chu family? Lin Wanru didn't see this child just now, and now her eyes fell on Chu Tianyi's face, and the next moment, she clenched her fist tightly. The rest of the people have never seen Chu Sichen, so they don't know that this child is 5 or 6 similar to Chu Sichen. Shen Ruotong was also obviously stunned. "Shen Ruojing, what do you mean? Could it be that this Xiao, the father of this child is young Master Mo, or young Master Yuan? Chu Xiang is lustful. Chu Yuan is the illegitimate son of the Chu family, and his status is not high. Shen Ruojing and these two people. It's really possible." The people around her suddenly looked envious. Although she is still not as good as Miss Lin, she may have a relationship with the Chu family. Who would dare to look down on her in the future? Before Shen Ruojing could speak, Lin Wanru suddenly interrupted her. "Shen Ruojing, this is not the place to talk, it is about the reputation of the young master of the Chu family, so let's talk to Mrs. Chu face to face. Go." Under everyone's eyes, Shen Ruojing was invited in by Lin Wanru and walked towards the VIP lounge. As the only 6-star hotel in Haikan, from the lobby to the lounge you have to pass through a large garden. Although Shen Ruojing often attended banquets in the past, she has never seen anyone who can cover the entire hotel as a venue. The Chu family is worthy of being the #1 wealthy family. Chu Tianyi jumped up beside her, looking around with bright eyes. "Mommy, Dad's family seems to be rich." He just checked, this hotel is the property of the Chu family. Precious and rare herbs, millions. A valuable artificial lake, millions. The whole hotel smells of money, he loves it. Shen Ruojing twitched the corners of her son's face as she was a financial fan, thinking that Mrs. Chu also seemed to have money. It's really a family background. Without outsiders, Lin Wanru put away her hypocritical face and sneered, "It seems that you have been really down in the past few years." Chu Tianyi rolled his eyes and muttered, "It's really hard to raise mommy, after all, the prices are getting more and more expensive, if they are like you, that's fine." Lin Wanru puzzled, "Like me?" Chu Tianyi stuck out his tongue, "Bitch." Lin Wanru didn't get into a rage, she stared at Chu Tianyi with a vicious look like a viper. She suddenly said viciously, "Throw this little wild species into the lake for me." Without a child, see what else she can use to recognize each other. The two security guards behind Lin Wanru were her confidants, one stopped Shen Ruojing, and the other went to catch Chu Tianyi. Shen Ruojing said angrily, "His father is Chu Sichen, who would dare to touch him?" Lin Wanru did not panic, she sneered, "So what? Tell you, Master Chen and I are in love with each other, and we will never allow this child to destroy us. Both love. If they really want to get engaged, what were you and Chu Sichen 5 years ago?" Shen Ruojing said, "I want to see Chu Sichen. She doesn't like misunderstandings, and some things are still clear in person." Lin Wanru fiddled with her fingers, "Young Master Chen, is it something that a lowly person like you can see? What are you still doing? Drown this little for me." But when the security was about to catch Chu Tianyi, the little guy nimbly got out from under the security's arm. Shen Ruojing didn't answer him, grabbed Lin Wanru's neck and pushed her hard against the fence by the lake. As long as she let go, Lin Wanru would fall into the lake. The two security guards dared to catch Chu Tianyi, and hurried over. Shen Ruojing raised her cool eyes, "Don't come here." Lin Wanru was shocked, "Shen Ruojing, what are you doing? Let Chu Sichen come to see me." Lin Wanru gritted her teeth with hatred, "Master Chen's plane is late, he won't come over tonight at all, just go back to the old house, you're going to die." She will never let them meet. At this moment, the Chu family butler seemed to hear the movement and came over with a few security guards. A faint light flashed in Lin Wanru's eyes, she suddenly pushed Shen Ruojing away, and she fell into the pool with a crashing. Shen Ruojing pushed Miss Lin into the pool. "Come and help." With several figures she jumped into the water. Lin Wanru was quickly rescued from the water, her eyes were red, and she said, "Housekeeper, she will say that the child belongs to young Master Mo, and then she will say it belonged to young Master Yuan, and even said that it belonged to young Master Chen. I just cheated her and she was talking nonsense, and she was so angry that she pushed me down." The housekeeper's face was very dark, and he directly ordered the surrounding security guards, "Arrest them for me. Dare to make trouble in the Chu family, I really don't want to live." Lin Wanru breathed a sigh of relief. She caught Shen Ruojing, how to deal with it is not up to her. She whispered to the two confidant security guards beside her, "The adult broke the ribs and threw it out, the little one, threw it into the river and drowned, pretending to fall accidentally." Lin Wanru's voice was extremely low, but Shen Ruojing could clearly see her mouth shape. Surrounded by a dozen security guards, Shen Ruojing frowned slightly. Chu Tianyi blinked. "Dad is not coming?" Fortunately, he was well prepared and had already sent his sister to the airport to intercept him. Airport. Chu Sichen got off the plane and strode towards the exit. The man is tall, and his body is covered with chills. He has a domineering aura that no strangers should enter. There are bodyguards in front and back to open the way, and ordinary people can't get close at all. As soon as he arrived at the VIP pickup port, he saw Liu Cheng wearing a coquettish floral shirt and standing there with a Samoyed dog on a leash. Beside him, a delicate little girl hugged a dinosaur puppet and stared straight at the dog. 5-year-old Chu Xiaomeng clenched her clothes tightly. Doesn't like to be in contact with people, she has mild social anxiety symptoms and doesn't like talking to strangers. But this dog is so cute. She gathered up her courage and walked to Liu Cheng, "Uncle, can I touch the puppy?" This timid and chirping words are irresistible. Liu Cheng teased her, "I'll touch you when I call my brother." Is he that old? No object yet, okay? Chu Xiaomeng widened her beautiful eyes. She didn't understand why someone made such a request, but she finally compromised. Uncle, can I touch my brother? Liu Cheng was stunned. A cold air hit. Liu Cheng turned his head in surprise. Brother Chen, you are finally here. Let me tell you, this little girl bullies me. Being played by a little girl is really worrying. Chu Sichen frowned in disgust, and looked at the little girl again. But seeing the little guy looking straight at him, a few seconds later, her eyes were filled with joy, and she shouted softly and loudly, Dad! Go and save mother and brother! Chu Xiaoman's milky words, everyone who called her was shocked. Liu Cheng and the bodyguards looked at Chu Sichen in shock. When did the eldest have a daughter? Chu Sichen stared at the child in front of him. State. Can Dad? Chu Sichen frowned, I'm not you. Before he finished speaking, the little guy took a step forward and held his finger. Dad, stop talking nonsense, my brother just sent me a message saying that they were surrounded by people, it was late, they're going to hit someone. Liu Cheng, who is listening to gossip next to him. This kid made a mistake, he must have been beaten? Chu Sichen's eyes fell on the small hand holding his rough big hand, his eyes dimmed, and his voice softened unconsciously, who is your mother? Shen Ruojing. The back garden of the Intercontinental Shimao is full of mess. A dozen bodyguards fell to the ground with bruised noses and swollen faces, unable to get up in pain. Lin Wanru was thrown into the water again, she tried her best to not be swept away by the water, and she shouted angrily, Shen Ruojing, if you dare to bully me, Madam Chu will not let you go. Yes, and Master Chen, he won't let you go, you are finished, your whole family is finished. Shen Ruojing clapped her hands calmly, nodded slightly to the housekeeper, and her voice was cold, sorry for disturbing Madam Chu's birthday banquet. The only housekeeper who was not beaten stood not far away, looking at her in astonishment and horror. Isn't she a famous vase beauty? How can you fight like this? Shen Ruojing took Chu Tianyi's little hand and walked out. Since Chu Sichen is not here, then she has no meaning here. Chu Tianyi frowned and asked worriedly, Mummy, you beat that surnamed Lin, will Dad's family really not let us go? It's fine. Knowing that her son thinks a lot, he was worried about the family at a young age. Shen Ruojing comforted him, when I see your father, the misunderstanding will be resolved. Even if Chu Sichen changed his mind, the child would always be his. With her understanding of that man, she would not embarrass them. Half an hour later, Shen Ruojing rode his bike home and turned into a detached villa with a THRESTARE Western-style building. As soon as I entered the door, I was shocked by the scene in front of me. The blockbuster looks shocking. Anyone will cry out in horror when they see this scene. Shen Ruojing twitched the corners of her mouth, and Chu Tianyi reluctantly walked over, squatted beside the corpse, and held her chin to meet the eyes of dead eyes. 30 seconds later, the man blinked his sore eyes. Jing Jing, isn't the performance of Dad's corpse too realistic? Look, the boy Ono is too scared to speak. It's gone. This person is Shen Ruojing's father, Jing Zhen, an 18th-tier veteran actor. Shen Ruojing takes her mother's surname, because Jing Zhen is the son-in-law of the Shen family, commonly known as the Little White Face. His face is more recognizable than that of first T-line stars, his facial features are exquisite, his peach blossom eyes are amorous and watery, his swaying waves are bright and dark at times, his body is tall and long, and time has left nothing on him. Traces, handsome mess. Unfortunately, it is not popular. Fortunately, he has been acting for more than 20 years and has a little income. This small villa is his private property, and it was not confiscated when he was driven out of the Shen family. Jing Zhen took the script and boasted proudly, don't look at Lao Tzu as a supporting role, but the whole drama revolves around me, I am the core of the whole drama. Important. Shen Ruojing, tell me, how many scenes do you have in this drama? Jing Zhen, a scene. Shen Ruojing. So the opening is dead? Jing Zhen was very dissatisfied. What kind of expression do you have? Although I am only a scene, but in this suspense script, I am the victim. They are all looking to kill me. Murderer. Jing Zhen's cell phone rang suddenly, and while he answered the phone, Shen Ruojing led Chu Tianyi to the room, and before entering the bedroom, she heard Jing Zhen's high voice, "What? Don't let me play it." "Why, director, I have conducted a detailed analysis of this role, and I have written a character biography for him to ensure that the corpse will be vividly played." The roar of the director on the opposite side also came over. "A corpse? You still write a character diversion? You are so sick." Jing Zhen said aggrieved, "You won't let me play a corpse. If you want to survive, leave quickly, the Chu family is not easy to mess with, your acting career is over, and you are dead." Jing Zhen? He hurriedly opened WeChat, and found that the agent sent him a message, cancelling all the recent trips. Jing Zhen frowned, and after a while, he slowly raised his head to look at Shen Ruojing, and said angrily, Jing, don't be afraid, what kind of father is there for you?" Chu Tianyi was stunned for a moment, and at that moment, his grandfather's image suddenly rose. But the next moment, he was beaten back to his original shape. He turned around in a hurry, and asked cowardly, "You said, should we sell the house first? This will also make it easier for us to escape." Chu Tianyi. He knows. Grandpa is never reliable. Shen Ruojing clenched her chin. Don't look at Jingzhen's jokes, in fact, he really likes acting, although he is not popular in the crew and is not popular in the crew, he is not tired of it, and he studies every role in depth. She was about to explain something when the phone rang and answered, and a frivolous male voice came from the opposite side, "Boss, how did you offend the Chu family? Why did the Chu family suddenly let out rumors, said to let your family disappear in Hiken?" Shen Ruojing hung up the phone directly. But the phone rang again, and she pressed the answer button impatiently. "I don't know if the Chu family can make me disappear, but do you believe I can make you disappear in Hiken?" Perceiving something was wrong, Shen Ruojing glanced at the call and found that it was a string of unfamiliar numbers. After a while, a long-lost low voice came from the opposite side, "I'm Chu Sichen." The voice was deep and powerful, familiar and unfamiliar. Her heart twitched hard, she didn't know what to say for a while, and the 1,000 words finally turned into one sentence, "Where are you?" "Airport." "Okay, I'll find you right away." It took Shen Ruojing only 40 minutes to get there. She walked quickly into the airport VIP lounge, and saw the man who was as tall as a king at a glance. He was a little less childish and more mature. She was sure that this was the man she had been looking for 5 years. Shen Ruojing slowed down. I immediately smiled. I didn't expect that I would also feel the emotion of being close to the country. She quickened her pace again, but when she was about 2 meters away from Chu Sichen, she was stopped by 2 bodyguards. She didn't care and asked the most crucial question first, "Are you going to be engaged to Lin Wanru?" If this is true, there is no need for further investigation. Shen Ruojing can afford it and put it down. After so many years of searching, I just want a result. Mentioning Lin Wanru, he subconsciously frowned and resisted, "No." Shen Ruojing's eyes flashed with satisfaction, and she asked, "Where have you been all these years?" "Miss Shen." This alienation and indifference made Shen Ruojing finally realize that something was wrong. Chu Xiaoming, who was brought to the front, said suspiciously, "Mommy, why did Dad say he doesn't know you?" Shen Ruojing was taken aback, "You don't know me?" A hint of impatience appeared in Chu Sichen's eyes, "Should I know you?" In the end, I didn't expect this woman to be even more strange, and she spoke in such a familiar tone as soon as they met. While thinking about it, she saw Shen Ruojing suddenly turn sideways flexibly, dodging the bodyguard and heading straight for him. "Mr. Chu, Be careful! When the bodyguard exclaimed, the woman had rushed to his side. Chu Sichen's eyes suddenly became sharp, but the next moment, his wrist was held down, and Shen Ruojing took the opportunity to sit beside him. Feel the pulse? A soft finger also touched his lips, and the woman's delicate face magnified in front of him, with charm in her peach blossom eyes. Shh. These eyes are a bit familiar. Chu Sichen really did not speak. The bodyguards around were also stunned. What Mr. Chu means, are they going up? Still pretending not to see it? In half a minute. The hand on the lips moved to his forehead and touched. The woman opened her mouth hesitantly. No fever, no signs of brain damage, illness and memory loss. Shen Ruojing glanced at him. You pretend. Chu Sichen's complexion changed. He stood up abruptly, took a step back, and distanced himself from her. Miss Shen, please respect yourself. Shen Ruojing leaned on the sofa, tilted her head, her peach blossom eyes rolled in her eyes. The child is born, can you tell me about your self-respect? Liu Cheng, who was standing with the bodyguards, was stunned at the moment. Of course, he knew the eldest miss of the Shen family who had been in Hiken. He exclaimed, Shen Ruojing, you mean brother Chen is yours? Lost boyfriend? Shen Ruojing nodded, yes. Liu Cheng gossips, however, brother Chen only returned to China once 5 years ago, and stayed for a week. Didn't you and your boyfriend have a relationship for half a year? You and brother Chen are dating online. Shen Ruojing sat up slowly, he has been in Hiken, we meet every weekend. Liu Cheng, you are unprofessional when it comes to porcelain, I have reminded you, brother Chen has been abroad, you can make it a little more like it. Shen Ruojing frowned. Always abroad? But she clearly remembers every day they dated. Could it be the wrong person? Although Shen Ruojing was sure that she would not admit her mistake, to be on the safe side, she stood up and said to Chu Sichen, I'll do a DNA test and come back to you after the results. After speaking, turn around and leave. When she first took the pulse of Chu Sichen, she took the opportunity to pull out a hair of him, took out a bag from her pocket, put the sample in. She hurried home to find her son and took him to the verification agency. Chu Tianyi, who was waiting for news at home, looked behind her, looked around again, and asked, Mummy, where is my sister? Shen Ruojing? Social Fear's daughter rarely goes out on weekdays, so she seems, maybe left her daughter behind? Airport VIP lounge. The bodyguards lowered their heads. It was our fault that we didn't stop Miss Shen. Chu Sichen's face was heavy, it's not an example. Yes. Liu Cheng asked cautiously from the side, Brother Chen, what about this little guy? Chu Sichen lowered his head and looked at Chu Xiaomeng who was holding the corner of his shirt. He resisted his anger and asked, where is your home? Chu Xiaomeng shook her head, Dad, I don't know. Don't call me Dad. Okay, Dad. Chu Sichen's forehead blue veins jumped, forget it, take her home first. The group got into the nanny car. On the road, the fearful Chu Xiaomeng sat obediently in the safety seat, trying to reduce her presence, but the expression on her face was very rich, excited for a while, and hesitant for a while. She's going to Dad's house, wow, so happy. But Dad must have a lot of family members, so scared. Chu Sichen, who saw all her little expressions in his eyes, actually thought it was quite cute. They soon arrived at the Chu family manor. Chu Xiaomeng was already leaning on the seat and fell asleep, with a small head. Chu Sichen was silent for a moment, then picked up the man and got out of the car. Almost 50, but well-maintained Mrs. Chu stepped forward, Sichen, you are finally back. Then saw the child he was holding, slightly surprised, this is. Mrs. Chu reached out her hand subconsciously and took Chu Xiaomeng from Chu Sichen's arms. With such a backhand, the little guy woke up in a daze. She rubbed her sleepy eyes, and saw many people. Chu Xiaomeng buried her head in Madame Chu's arms. Mrs. Chu. The little guy is charming and cute, with a milky scent on his body, which made her tighten her arms immediately, and asked in a soft voice, "Little girl, whose family are you?" Chu Xiaomeng, sister, I belong to my father's house. My brother taught her that the first element of social interaction is to call her sister when she sees a beautiful woman. Mrs. Chu was really happy, and said to Chu Sichen, "This is your romantic debt outside. There is a reason for the again." 5 years ago, when Chu Sichen returned to China for a week, he had a relationship with a woman after being calculated. 10 months later, Lin Wanru came to the door with her newborn baby in her arms. I checked the DNA, and the child is indeed Chu Sichen. The blood of the Chu family cannot be left alone, so Mrs. Chu left the child in the Chu family and named it Chuyu. Thinking of this, Mrs. Chu's eyes fell on Chu Xiaomeng again. "Girl, who is your mother?" Chu Xiaomeng replied, "Shen Ruojing." Mrs. Chu frowned, "Is it Shen Ruojing again?" Thinking that today she brought the child to the banquet to make a big fuss, and looking at Chu Xiaomen's cute appearance, Mrs. Chu had the idea that it would be nice if it was her granddaughter. Mrs. Chu suddenly said, "Let's do a DNA comparison." "No." Chu Sichen said coldly, "I was only calculated once." Mrs. Chu is very sorry. But she understands Chu Sichen's restraint. There must be a reason for being calculated back then, and she accidentally learned that her son has someone he likes, but for some unknown reason, they lost contact. This is also the reason why he delayed giving Lin Wanru the title. But the child always needs a mother. Mrs. Chu retracted her thoughts and carried Chu Xiaomeng upstairs. "Girl, there is another brother at home, but he has already slept. When he wakes up tomorrow, let him play with you." After coaxing the child to sleep, Mrs. Chu went out and explained to the housekeeper, "Although Shen Ruojing is unbearable, the child is innocent, take care of her." "Yes." The housekeeper nodded. She hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. "Miss Lin used the name of the Chu family to spread news, saying that you were very angry and did not want to see the Shen Ruojing family in Haikan again." Mrs. Chu frowned suddenly. People in high positions all year round are not angry and arrogant, no wonder Sichen doesn't like her, she is too careful. The housekeeper asked, "Do you want to clarify?" Mrs. Chu sighed. "To clarify is to hit her in the face, to hit her in the face is to hit Chu Yu's face." Chu Yu was the grandson she brought up by herself, and for the sake of the child, Mrs. Chu wanted to match Lin Wanru and Chu Sichen. Mrs. Chu waved, "Forget it." Shen Ruojing made a big banquet for no reason. Next day, after Chu Xiaomeng got up, Mrs. Chu led her downstairs for breakfast. As soon as she went downstairs, she saw a child of her age sitting on the sofa, her eyes widened instantly. Chu Yu sat proudly, as the most honorable young master in Haikan, he never pretended to be others. He glanced at Chu Xiaomeng. "Well, she looks pretty cute." Chu Yu's back was straight and his chin was slightly raised. The grandmother told him that a little sister came to the house, although her mother's reputation is not very good, but the affairs of adults cannot involve the children. So, if Chu Xiaomeng greets him later, should he ignore her? Ignore, it doesn't seem good. If it makes sense. According to the servant, her mother offended her grandmother. Chu Yu. She is so cold. Although her background is not good, she is not arrogant. Chu Yu gave her 100 in his heart. He didn't know at all. At this moment, Chu Xiaomeng lowered her head and kept thinking in her heart, "He can't see me. He can't see me." The world of social fear is so simple. The Lin family. Lin Wanru caught a cold and was sitting on the bed sneezing. Thinking of the shame last night, she said viciously, "If all her triplets were stolen back then, there would be no trouble today." 5 years ago, Lin Wanru accidentally saw Chu Sichen and Shen Ruojing in the hotel. After that, Chu Sichen disappeared, and Shen Ruojing called the police and made a lot of noise. Only then did she know that Shen Ruojing didn't know who the man was that night, and she was pregnant. So she asked her mother to focus on Shen Ruojing and bribed the doctor. After Shen Ruojing's obstetric examination, she changed from triplets to twins. She gave birth by caesarean section under general anesthesia. Shen Ruojing didn't notice it at all. But she never thought that there would be a day when she would be exposed. Mrs. Lin also frowned. Her father almost found out for stealing one. Besides, what are you going to do with triplets? You want to have children of your own with Master Chen in the future. Let her are the 3 children coming to grab the property. Lin Wanru bit her lip and was about to cry, but what should I do now? Mrs. Lin comforted her, don't be afraid, Shen Ruojing can't contact young Master Chen at all, and within a few days, their family will disappear in Hiken. I will go to Shen's house now to put pressure on, you wait for the good news. In a Thresdare villa. Shen Ruojing got up on time, played a set of Tai Chi, sat on the sofa and waited for news from the DNA verification agency. Squeak! But flashing excitement, Jing Jing, my mother wants to share some good news with you. Without waiting for a reply, she said to herself, I helped the Shen family win a big project, and your grandmother will definitely resume my position as general manager. Shen Ruojing took a sip of wolfberry water and said coolly, you said this for the 13th time this year, they just painted cakes for you. Shen Qunhui sighed, Jing Jing, I know you have opinions on your grandmother, but she had to drive us away at first, but she didn't forget us. After all these years, I'm not still here. Do you work in the Shen family's company? Besides, the Shen family will give us living expenses every month. That's because you are capable. Whenever you go to other companies, your salary is more than that. Shen Qunhui frowned, don't say that. After all, it's not biological, your grandmother can treat me like this is very good. Shen Ruojing fell silent. Shen Qunhui is actually a child adopted by Mrs. Shen. Mrs. Shen just took a fancy to her beauty and wanted to use it for marriage, but she didn't expect Shen Qunhui to be outstanding in business, but her 2 sons were not good. Shen Qunhui entered the company at the age of 18, and the business is booming. Mrs. Shen gave birth to the idea of not wanting her to marry, so she cut off many of her suitors, saying that she was reluctant to give up her daughter, and finally let her recruit a son-in-law who has no background. Zhen came to the door. 5 years ago, as soon as the Shen Ruojing incident happened, Mrs. Shen expelled them from the Shen family and dismissed Shen Qunhui as the general manager on the grounds that her bad reputation had affected her cousin's marriage. Only gave Shen Qunhui a sales position as a charity. In fact, it was just taking away Shen Qunhui's inheritance. You can make Shen Qunhui work for the Shen family without giving her any shares, just give her some living expenses as a token, how good. Unfortunately, mothers who yearn for affection do not believe this at all. Shen Qunhui even asked her extravagantly, Jing Jing, you said I did better, did your grandmother let us go home? No. Shen Ruojing ruthlessly pierced her fantasy. At this moment, Shen Qunhui's cell phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID at random, and immediately corrected her face, and answered the call obediently, Mom, go home now? Okay, I'll be right over. Hang up the phone, Shen Qunhui became excited, Jing Jing, I said that your grandmother is not that kind of person, you still don't believe it. See? Your grandmother wants me to go home now, she must be I have resumed my position as general manager. She said sternly, when I come back from the position of general manager, you have to apologize for slandering your grandmother behind your back. After speaking, she went out the door anxiously. Shen Ruojing was about to chase him out, when the phone rang. It was the DNA verification agency. The results are in. Shen Ruojing answered the phone, and a whistling female voice came from the opposite side, Darling, people can do the test for you in person, so I also slept less beauty sleep, you have to remember, oh I'm alone I really envy you, you retired early at a young age, and lived a retirement life. It's really pitiful to have a hard-working life like me. Shen Ruojing interrupted her, so, what is the comparison result? The two are biological father and son, the electronic report has been sent to your mailbox. Thanks. Shen Ruojing hung up the phone and frowned slightly, since she didn't recognize the wrong person, why didn't Chu Sichen remember her? She took out her mobile phone and inquired about Chu Sichen's news. As a result, let alone any news of injury or illness in the past, even the report on the financial news has disappeared. I can't find anything about Chu Sichen on the internet. The heir of the Chu family is a mystery in Haikan. Since he was born, he has been selected as the heir and cultivated in secret. The Chu family only released some rumors to the outside world, and the name and photos have never been rumored. No wonder she didn't find any clues for him in the past 5 years. At this moment, Shen Qunhui rushed out in a Chevrolet sedan. Shen Ruojing didn't have time to think anymore, got on the motorcycle and chased after him. Mother has been working low profile for the Shen family to make money for so many years. She persuaded her countless times to no avail. Maybe today she will be able to see Mrs. Shen's face clearly. The two entered the Shen family one after the other. After parking the car, Shen Ruojing took 2 steps to catch up with her mother. Shen Qunhui was so happy when she saw her. Jing Jing, did you figure it out? That's right. We will be closer to your grandmother in the future. After all, we are a family. She looked forward to, when I am promoted to general manager this time, I can arrange a position for you as well in the Shen family, so that you will have a job. Shen Ruojing, not necessary. While speaking they entered the living room. Mrs. Lin sat upright with a livid face, and the silver-haired Mrs. Shen Tai sat next to her, with a pleasing smile on her face, and was talking about something. Seeing this, Shen Qunhui was a little surprised. Mrs. Lin is also here? What a rare visitor! She said politely. She couldn't wait to go to Mrs. Shen. Mom, the general manager's business. Pop. Before she finished speaking, Mrs. Shen suddenly rounded her arms and gave her a slap in the face. The burning pain on her cheek made Shen Qunhui stunned. Mom. Mrs. Shen angrily said, don't call my mother. My mother taught you propriety, righteousness, and integrity, taught you to read and be a man, but didn't teach you how to be a mother. You spoiled Shen Ruojing so lawlessly, it's her character that made her get into such a catastrophe. After Mrs. Shen talked about the Chu family banquet, Shen Qunhui read eyes. Mom, there must be a misunderstanding, Jing Jing is not such a person. Shen Ruojing, who was standing beside her, lowered her peach blossom eyes and sighed slightly. I thought that my mother was beaten, and I could finally recognize the reality, but I didn't expect that this old green tea gave Shen Qunhui a brainwash. But this confused mother is a well-known female protector. Even if she was kicked out of the house when she was unmarried and pregnant, she never scolded her. As an orphan, she longs for affection. This is true for the old lady, and even more so for myself. Mrs. Shen Tai sighed. No matter what misunderstanding, it is true that she hit Miss Lin. Don't talk nonsense, now the Chu family is very angry. If we want to suppress this matter, we must apologize to Mrs. Lin. Shen Qunhui looked at Mrs. Lin who was sitting on the single sofa. Mrs. Lin lowered her head and made a surprised expression. Ah, why are my shoes dirty? Shen Qunhui stiffened. Mrs. Shen reminded, what are you doing? Why don't you clean up, Mrs. Lin? Shen Qunhui turned her head suddenly and looked at Mrs. Shen in disbelief. Mrs. Shen lowered her eyelids, and suddenly stepped forward. I just begged Mrs. Lin for a long time, and she agreed that as long as you can apologize well and show our sincerity, let Ruojing go. I know you have self-esteem, you can't bend down, I didn't teach you well, if you don't wipe, I'll do it for you. Seeing that she was about to squat down, she was so frightened that Shen Qunhui knelt down as soon as her knees softened. Mom. But the next moment, the arm was held tightly. Mrs. Shen's legs are slightly bent. At this moment, she is neither kneeling nor standing. Even the emotions that have just been brewing are not coherent. She gave Shen Ruojing a hateful look. This offended the Lin family, and Mrs. Lin promised her that as long as she cooperated with Mrs. Lin to humiliate Shen Qunhui, she would not bother with the Shen family. As for Shen Ruojing, let her die. Mrs. Shen stood up straight, grabbed Shen Qunhui's hand again, and said with a pretentious attitude, "Qunhui, I know you're wronged, seeing you like this, my mother's heart hurts too. But the Shen family, what about the whole family? And even if you don't care for the Shen family, you have to think about Ruojing. It's not easy for her to bring a child, and she will be targeted by the Chu family. For Beijing." Shen Qunhui's tears rolled down. "Don't say anything, I'll wipe." Shen Ruojing frowned. "It's useless if you wipe it, the Lin family won't let us go." Shen Qunhui's body trembled slightly. "Jing Jing, it's okay, don't worry, your grandmother won't lie to us." Shen Ruojing clenched her fists, knowing that it was useless to talk too much, so she closed her mouth. Shen Qunhui pulled out a tissue from the coffee table and slowly squatted in front of Mrs. Lin. She stretched out her hand tremblingly, put Mrs. Lin's foot on her knee, wiped the shoe, and then said, "Mrs. Lin, I'm sorry." Mrs. Lin looked at Shen Qunhui condescendingly. Her husband had a crush on her when he was young, which made Mrs. Lin resentful all the time. Seeing her so humble at this moment, Mrs. Lin finally smiled with satisfaction. Mrs. Shen hurriedly asked, "Mrs. Lin, are you relieved?" Mrs. Lin pulled her feet back and said with a smile, "Well, I will tell the Chu family that the Shen family has already kicked them out of the house, and this matter has nothing to do with the Shen family. As for their family, the Chu family won't let it go." "Madam, does the Shen family have any opinions?" Mrs. Shen immediately said, "No problem. I removed her from the household registration book 5 years ago, and we have nothing to do." Shen Qunhui looked at the two people in astonishment, listening to their conversation. She just felt unbelievable. What did my mother just say? At this moment, her arm was supported and pulled to stand up. Shen Ruojing's eyes are very dark, like Ashura, and her voice is also very cold. "Mom, did you see clearly? If you see it clearly, then step back to avoid being accidentally injured." Seeing Shen Qunhui stunned, as if she didn't understand her words clearly, Shen Ruojing pulled her back 2 steps, then stepped forward and came to Mrs. Lin. She said lightly, "Your shoes are not clean." Mrs. Lin sneered, "What? You also want to beg for mercy? Tell you, it's impossible." Next moment, crash. Shen Ruojing picked up the fish tank next to her and poured it over her. Mrs. Lin only felt cold on her head, and something slippery rolled down her cheeks. She reached out and grabbed a goldfish. She jumped up with a loud scream, but stepped on water plants again. It slipped and knelt directly in front of Shen Qunhui with a pop. Shen Ruojing put the fish tank down. Peach Blossom Eyes picked it up. "Tisk, there's no need for such a big gift." Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin only felt the rage rushing into her heart, and she shouted in a sharp voice, "Shen, are you Jing? I want you to die." Mrs. Shen was also taken aback. She hurried to Mrs. Fu Lin, and roared at Shen Ruojing, "Nai barrier! If you don't want to live, don't burden our Shen family." Shen Ruojing looked at her. The deep and gloomy eyes made Mrs. Shen startled. Thinking of this granddaughter's generous character, Mrs. Shen hurriedly shouted at the outside, "Come on!" The nanny and security at home rushed in. Mrs. Shen pointed at them, "Drive them out, mother and daughter. They will not be allowed to come to the door in the future. Also, Shen Qunhui, you have been fired. You are not allowed to go again in the future." Company. Shen Qunhui finally found her voice at this moment. "Mom? I just negotiated a big order for the company, and I will sign it soon." She just wants to use these to save some mother-daughter feelings at this moment. Mrs. Shen sneered, "Yes, you helped us negotiate cooperation with Z Group. The Shen family will not worry about food and clothing in the next few decades, and the signing of the contract will let your brother just go. So, what are you doing here? Get out! The confusion in Shen Qunhui's eyes finally faded away, and a touch of bitterness gradually surfaced. Her whole figure seemed to be immersed in ice and snow, and suddenly she could not feel any warmth. Her body began to tremble. But at this moment, a warm and powerful hand grabbed her shoulder. Shen Qunhui slowly turned her head back, and saw that Jing Zhen did not know when to arrive. The man was tall and straight, with deep facial features, and his tall body seemed to give people strength at this moment. He took a step forward, his broad shoulders protected his wife and daughter behind him, those peach blossom eyes like Shen Ruojing lost the game world of the past. He said in a low and powerful voice, "Madam, because of your love for raising Qunhui, I can let go of the past. From now on, our family of 5 has nothing to do with the Shen family. I hope you will never regret today." Utter desperation. Leave these words, he supported Shen Qunhui's shoulder and strode out the door. Mrs. Shen sneered, "I don't know, what do you think our Dortodo or son-in-law is a great person? An 18th dear young actor. Oh, no, now I can't even be an actor. Right? With his old white face, what can I regret?" Shen Ruojing's eyes flashed with sarcasm, and followed her parents out the door. As soon as I arrived at the parking lot, I heard Jing Zhen asking for credit. "Wife, how was my performance just now? Did you show the imposing manner of not bullying the young? Oh no, it's the poor youth?" Depressed Shen Qunhui said perfunctorily, "Well, it's not bad." "Then wife, you have to work hard, you can start a company and surpass the Shen family." Shen Qunhui was stunned. "Start a company by yourself? Jing Zhen is very righteous." "Yes, wife, you have to make good money. Then invest in a drama for me, so that I don't have to look at other people's faces. When I become a household name, let that old green tea regret it." Shen Qunhui looked at him with determination. She was driven out of the Shen family's company who loved doing business. She was full of confusion, but at this moment she vaguely found the meaning of life. But she quickly reacted and frowned. "Let's not talk about where the principal of the company came from, let's just say that we have offended the Chu family. The Chu family is very powerful in Haikan, and if they speak out, who would dare to cooperate with them?" Shen Ruojing said, "This is a misunderstanding, I'll go to the Chu family to explain it clearly." Shen Qunhui nodded, "You are right, the Chu family is not an unreasonable family, then I will apologize on your behalf. She doesn't want her daughter to see other people's faces, she can be wronged, but she can't be wronged." Shen Ruojing, "No, I'll go by myself." Shen Qunhui wanted to say something, but Jing Zhen suddenly covered her stomach with a pale face. "Wife, my stomach hurts, you accompany me home first." "Ah? Can you make it home? Or here it is?" "No, I think the Shen family is dirty." At this moment, the phone rang. After answering the answer, the frivolous male voice came from the opposite side. "Boss, you were kicked out by the Shen family? How can it develop to today? Our mother is really wronged." Shen Ruojing, "It's my mother." "Sorry, your mother is my mother, it's the same. But since this is the case, the cooperation between our Z group and the Shen family can be cancelled, right?" Also, someone offered a high price to buy Dr. Z's biological petri dish patent. Do you want to meet the buyer? Not available. You're retired, what can you do? Busy looking for dad. Shen Ruojing hung up the phone and went straight to Chu Group. The Chu Group is located in the center of Haikan. Shen Ruojing entered the door and politely asked the front desk, "Hello, I want to see Chu Sichen." "Front desk, may I ask who you are? Do you have an appointment?" "No, please call and tell him I'm Shen Ruojing." Shen Ruojing was certain that his daughter was still with him, and Chu Sichen would definitely meet her. Otherwise we are welcome. As soon as she waved, the bodyguards rushed over. Shen Ruojing frowned, thinking about whether to enter. The front desk sneered, "Do you think Mr. Chu can be seen by anyone?" Meanwhile, the top floor of the tall building. Liu Cheng is laughing, "Brother Chen, Dr. Z is really insane, and his mobile phone has the highest level of encryption, we can't find him at all, otherwise we won't let you go out in person." Chu Sichen's articulated fingers quickly tapped on the computer keyboard. The light of the computer hit his face, making his eyes more firm, as if everything was under control. Pop! With the final press of the enter key, Liu Cheng put his head in front of the screen. "Brother Chen is awesome. This firewall can be broken. As a computer expert, let me see Z, where is the doctor's phone located?" The next moment, he looked surprised, "Isn't this the door of the company?" In the lobby downstairs. Shen Ruojing narrowed her eyes and looked at the security guards who came around. This group of people are all armed with electric batons. At first glance, they come prepared. The front desk raised her chin slightly and said sarcastically, "Shen Ruojing, Miss Lin is about to get engaged to Mr. Chu, and you should make trouble with him, shameless." At this moment, there was a commotion at the elevator entrance, and several bodyguards in black came out, standing domineeringly on both sides with their hands behind their backs. Chu Sichen was dressed in a black suit, with a straight body like a javelin, a sharp figure and a resolute face. Who didn't know it thought he came from the army. 5 years ago, he had the temperament of a little milk dog, but now he is full of tough guy aura. "Shen Ruojing, why is it you again?" Liu Cheng, who was wearing a floral shirt, put both hands in his trouser pockets, walked over and frowned, "Tell you, Brother Chen and I are busy looking for someone today, so I don't have time to talk to you, you don't be ignorant of lifts." Dr. Z has always been mysterious, and few people outside know his true identity, but he suddenly ran to the door of the group, knowing that they want to buy a microbe petri dish. There are people coming and going in the lobby, and there are many people who come to Chu Group to do business. Which one is the boss? Shen Ruojing ignored him and went straight to Chu Sichen. His bodyguards have long experience, preventing her from approaching from all directions. Shen Ruojing could only stand 2 meters away from him, looked at him and said calmly, "The DNA report is out, the child is yours." Chu Sichen's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. Liu Cheng was surprised, "You even have a fake report ready?" Shen Ruojing was about to speak when the phone rang again. "There are so many calls today." She frowned and was about to hang up in annoyance, but she answered after seeing the number above, and the other side didn't know what to say, so she glanced at Chu Chen, took a deep breath and said, "I'll be there soon." Hang up the phone, her voice turned cold, "If you don't believe me, why don't you do it yourself?" "Chu Sichen, I hope you will contact me after you have done your DNA, and explain to me what all this is about." She glanced at the front desk and said sarcastically, "Besides, I didn't know that the door of the Chu Group was controlled by Lin Wanru." Leave these words, she seemed to have something urgent and turned around and went out the door. Through the glass door, she could be seen picking up the helmet and strapping it on, neatly riding the motorcycle, and leaving with a humming sound. All the action in one go, cool and sassy. Liu Cheng couldn't help sighing, as expected of the flower of the high mountain. "I almost forgot about business, Brother Chen, look at which direction Dr. Z is." Chu Sichen picked up the phone, but found that on the tracking software, the little red dot of Dr. Z flashed a few times and disappeared. Liu Cheng's shoulders collapsed instantly, "It's over, it was discovered." Chu Sichen put away his mobile phone, his face was light and cloudy, his dark eyes could not see the loss, but he looked at the front desk gloomily. The front desk lowered his head in fright, and Nyanyo said, "Mr. Chu, it's Miss Linear." Mentioning of Lin Wanru, Chu Sichen felt a little physical disgust, he coldly ordered, "You have been fired." Leave these words, Chu Sichen strode out. Liu Cheng followed behind him. Brother Chen, where are you going? Go home. Why are you going home? Don't you look for Dr. Z? Liu Cheng suddenly realized something. You don't really want to go back and do DNA with that little girl, do you? But yes, Shen Ruojing is not stupid. If it's not your child, why do you do it like this? Biting you like crazy. But be careful looking for agencies, so as not to be manipulated in the report. Chu Sichen took a step and glanced at him. Chu Xiaomeng. What? She has a name. Liu Cheng, isn't your daughter, so protect her? Shen Ruojing came to the Golden Bilingual Kindergarten by motorcycle. At the door, little Chu Tianyi was holding a large school bag, his head drooping, like an abandoned puppy. The gentle teacher said with a look of guilt, Mother Xiao, I'm really sorry, we received a call from the Chu family to drop your child from school, and the Chu family passed the word, Hiken should be there will be no kindergartens that accept Ono anymore. Her eyes were red, I tried my best. Chu Tianyi held her hand, Teacher, I can't bear you. When I grow up, I will open a kindergarten and let you be the principal, okay? One sentence made the teacher feel more distressed for him. Shen Ruojing picked up the little guy and stuffed it into the back seat, until he turned the corner, the little guy was still shouting, Teacher, I will miss you. Shen Ruojing, stop pretending. Chu Tianyi, who was still in a low mood just now, was instantly radiant and grinned, finally, I don't have to go to school, it's so cool. He envied his sister for not having to go to kindergarten. But my father is too bad. Since the kindergarten belongs to the Chu family, he not only did not waive my tuition, but he even bullied me, which is too much. When he got home, Chu Tianyi slipped out of the car and ran into his room. He was going to ask his sister what happened to his father. But as soon as I picked up the phone, I saw a message from my sister, Brother, father has a son. Chu Tianyi? What is this? He replied, Is that child by your side? Hurry up and use the method I taught you to chat with him, cliché. I want to know all about him. Chu's house, in the living room. Chu Xiaoman's pupils shrank when she received the news from her brother, and she looked up in fright and glanced at Chu Yu, who was sitting opposite, serious. The fearful little guy frowned. How to take the initiative to chat? She thought for a while, then suddenly said, You. Chu Yu raised her head sharply and looked at her eagerly. Is Gao Leng's little sister finally willing to take care of him? Then, I heard Chu Xiaomeng ask weakly, Are you and your father related to God? Chu Yu? He answered with question marks, father-son relationship. Oh. Seeing him staring at her, Chu Xiaomeng asked nervously, What's your last name? My surname is Chu. Oh. Did he just not answer well enough? Mrs. Chu, who was sitting next to her, listened to the conversation between the two, and looked at Chu Xiaomeng with a smile full of love. The little guy wore a white sand dress and sat on the sofa obediently. She was still holding the dinosaur doll, bowed her head, and her long eyelashes cast shadows on her face. The small hand holds the big mobile phone and does not know who to send a message to. So cute. Why not her granddaughter? Click. The door opened, Chu Sichen strode in, his eyes fell directly on Chu Xiaomeng, and the words of the woman flashed in his mind, If you don't believe me, why don't you do it yourself? The woman's expression did not seem to be fake when she spoke, which made him really believe her words. When the line of sight swept across Chu Yu, she immediately dismissed the idea. He only slept with one woman, how could he have two children? This is too ridiculous. He lowered his eyes and entered the study directly. Mrs. Chu looked at his back and hesitated, her son kept his face straight all day, he should be closer to him. But Chu Sichen was sent abroad since she was a child. The relationship between mother and son is not close, and there are some things that she can't push too hard. The phone rang, she answered, and Lin Wanru's cry came from the opposite side, Auntie, she really doesn't give face to the Chu family. She hit me yesterday, and today she hit my mother again. My mother went to the Shen family for the reputation of the Chu family, and wanted them to apologize publicly, so as not to tarnish the reputation of the young master of the Chu family, but I didn't expect her to be so arrogant and say that she is not afraid of the Chu family at all. Auntie, if she's all right like this, wouldn't everyone be able to carry the child to the door in the future? Didn't the Chu family become the biggest joke in Haikan? After hearing her cry, Mrs. Chu was silent for a long time, and then said, I see. Mrs. Chu's eyes turned cold. No wonder she called and cried, she was waiting for her here. She rubbed her temples with a headache. How can a grandson who is on the top of his heart have such a mother? And then she felt a little distressed for Chu Xiaomeng. Such a well-behaved child was dropped out of school? Chu Xiaomeng, who was forced to drop out, was reporting the news with her mobile phone at this time. Brother, I've made it clear, his surname is Chu, and he has a father-son relationship with his father. Shen family, Chu Tianyi, who was hiding in the room, heard the movement of the mobile phone and immediately picked it up, but after seeing the above information, his whole person was not well, and he said badly. Who is not a father and son relationship with his father? Hello. Chu Xiaomeng, my father and I are father and daughter. Chu Tianyi? He put down the phone silently, and asked the sister if she feared to inquire about the news or something. It was really unreliable. At this moment, there was a knock on the door downstairs. Shen Ruojing was cleaning the locomotive when she saw Lin Wanru and a group of people standing outside the gate of the villa courtyard, all of them wearing uniforms and looking like public officials. Lin Wanru took out her work card and introduced with a serious face, Shen Ruojing, we are staff members of the Children's Protection Association. We received a real name report saying that someone here is abusing children, so we came to investigate specially. Shen Ruojing? This Lin Wanru is really haunted. She squinted her eyes and asked, who founded your association? Lin Wanru still said solemnly, we are a private organization led by the Chu family and led by several large enterprises such as Haikan Lin Group. We have lawyers, doctors, and other professionals in our association for free. Professionals in children's services. She took out a notebook. Shen Ruojing, I want to ask you a few questions, please answer truthfully, what work are you doing now? Shen Ruojing put down the rag in her hand, a thoughtful look appeared on her pretty face, and slowly said, it's freelance. Lin Wanru hooked her lips and recorded, that is, there is no job. According to our investigation, your mother and father are also homeless, so the whole family has no income now. We also asked the neighbors around, we know that you have 2 children in your family, but the little girl is kept at home by you all the year round and you do not let her go out. Why is this? Shen Ruojing suppressed her anger, because she doesn't like it. How is that possible? Children like to play outside. You must be doing this because you prefer sons to daughters. Now, we suspect that the child has a tendency to be abused. Please let her come out and meet us. She's not home. Lin Wanru's attitude is very strong, she doesn't go out, how can she not be at home? Shen Ruojing, please cooperate with our work, if you refuse. Shen Ruojing raised her cold eyes, and her voice was cold, what will happen? As far as I know, private organizations cannot break into private houses without permission. Lin Wanru took a step back in fright, but her attitude was still very arrogant. Our association and the police station have closely cooperated, and now we have enough evidence. We have asked them to send the police to rescue the children in distress, and we are investigating during the period. The children will first be sent to the orphanage for good education. There was a sinister flash in her eyes. By the way, I work as a volunteer in the orphanage all the year round, don't worry, I will definitely take good care of the 2 children. As these words fell, an alarm sounded. Lin Wanru sneered, I know you are good at fighting, but you can't stop them. Attacking the police is against the law. The fist that Shen Ruojing held could only be slowly loosened, watching them break into the room and go straight upstairs. Bang! Shen Ruojing slowly hooked her lips. I said, they are not at home. Lin Wanru asked angrily, where are they? Oh, went to their dad. Lin Wanru was stunned. Did the two little wild species see Chu Sichen? Then, the consequences are unimaginable. At this moment, Chu Tianyi, who fled, sat in the taxi and patted his chest. Thanks to his wit, after Mommy winked, he left directly through the back door, otherwise he would fall into the clutches of the devil. Now, he's going to find Dad. Just let him investigate what the other son of his father is. The car soon arrived at Chu's house. Just as Chu Sichen was about to go out, the bodyguards were waiting outside the door. Then, I saw Chu Tianyi sneakily squatting and playing with stones not far away, occasionally looking up at the team here. A bodyguard became vigilant. Whose child is this? Why are you here? Liu Cheng was leaning on the car body and was digging his ears. Hearing this, he couldn't help but spit out, a 5-year-old child can scare you like this, you can't come again. Looking for Brother Chen to call Dad. Several bodyguards couldn't help laughing when they heard this. At this time, Chu Sichen came out, and everyone stood up straight and looked at the 4 directions solemnly. Seeing that Chu Sichen was about to get into the car, suddenly, the little guy who was playing in the distance rushed over like a cannonball, so fast that no one could react. When I came back to my senses, I saw the little boy hugging Chu Sichen's leg, staring at the same phoenix eyes and shouting loudly, Dad! Crowd? Chu Sichen? Chu Tianyi blinked and shouted again, Dad, I am Chu Tianyi, my mother is Shen Ruojing, and my sister and I are twins. I miss you so much. Chu Sichen. First Chu Xiaomeng, then Shen Ruojing, and now another Chu Tianyi? If he doesn't know each other, he will have another triplets? He suddenly burst into anger, bent down and hugged Chu Tianyi. He really wants to do a DNA, and when the result comes out, let's see how the woman is entangled with him. Chu Sichen was about to find a testing agency, but a car stopped outside in a hurry. Lin Wang got out of the car, and she walked towards Chu Sichen with eagerness on her face, but he was stopped 5 meters away by bodyguards. Chu Sichen specially explained that she would not be allowed to approach him. Lin Wanru shouted anxiously, Sichen, I have something to say. Chu Sichen ignored her and was about to get into the car with Chu Tianyi in her arms. Seeing this, Lin Wanru shouted, I know who the father of this child is in your arms. Chu Sichen took a step. In the living room of the Chu family, Chu Sichen and Madame Chu were sitting on the sofa. Lin Wanru sat on one side cautiously, and only dared to sit on 1/3 of her buttocks. She lowered her head and dared not look directly at them. Mrs. Chu stared at her, since you know, why didn't you tell me earlier? Lin Wanru raised her head, looked at the pair of eyes that seemed to see through her mind, and stammered her words, I forgot it before, but seeing her swear that the child is from Sichen, this I just remembered that I saw young Master Mo in the Wilson Hotel 5 years ago. Mom, are you looking for me? A man in his 20s walked in, and the voice arrived before anyone arrived. He and Chu Sichen had 2 or 3 similar appearances, but completely different personalities. Chu Chimo's phoenix eyes were lively, and her whole body was full of arrogance. She sat beside Mrs. Chu. Why, I'm in a bar with some good buddies. Mrs. Chu stared at him. 5 years ago, the night your brother had an accident, were you at the Wilson Hotel? Chu Chimo scratched his head. How do I know? It's been a long time. Chu Sichen said coldly, then think about it carefully. Chu Chimo sat up straight. He was not afraid of always scolding his mother, but the calm-faced eldest brother, it seems. Chu Sichen looked at him. Chu Chimo suddenly shuddered. I remembered, yes, I went to the open room with a few buddies to play games that day, and I drank too much. Mrs. Chu hates iron not being steel, and then had a relationship with a woman. Chu Chimo blushed and jumped up from the sofa. How do you know? But on that night 5 years ago, I drank too much and couldn't control myself, and was taken advantage of by a woman. He didn't say anything about it. Lin Wanru breathed a sigh of relief. 5 years ago, Chu Chimo was her chosen marriage goal. That night, she put the medicine in Chu Chimo's wine, and then took him to another room, but caught a glimpse of a tall figure coming out of a room. The man is amazing. Lin Wanru was thinking about who this person was when she heard Chu Chimo shouting in a daze, "Big brother!" She suddenly realized that this is the mysterious heir of the Chu family. She lost her feelings for Chu Chimo immediately, threw him into the room, and said to the bodyguard, "Just find a woman to help him solve it." Then following Chu Sichen, he calculated this monstrous wealth. She will never allow Shen Ruojing to destroy her future. Lin Wanru's eyes flashed and she said, "Master Mo, the woman that night was Shen Ruojing, she came to the door with her child." Chu Chimo was stunned, "Fuck? Lao Tzu is so awesome, he slept with the flower of jailing. Don't look at Shen Ruojing's notoriety, but she is the goddess in the hearts of every man in Haikan. She is so beautiful. Smile and smile. It's a pity that she has a bad personality and is lonely and proud." Lin Wanru? This is not the right response. Mrs. Chu stared at this ineffective young son, thinking of Chu Xiaomeng. She softened her heart, and asked, "Child, the Chu family will definitely recognize it. What are you and Shen Ruojing going to do? Get married?" Lin Wan looked at her suddenly and clenched her fists tightly. Shen Ruojing can get married immediately if she has a child from the Chu family? Why? She bit her lip and suddenly said, "As far as I know, over the years, Shen Ruojing has vented all his anger on the child because he couldn't find the man that night. This is child protection. Evidence collected by the association." Lin Wanru put the evidence in front of several people and sighed. "There is also information provided by Mrs. Shen Tai, saying that Shen Ruojing has been moody since childhood, ignorant of skills, and." Lin Wanru paused for a while, then suppressed her voice and said, "Mrs. Shen also shared some exciting news. It turns out that she was abducted and sold to the mountains when she was 10 years old, and she was only found when she was 13 years old. At that time she was covered in blood and kept away from anyone, so she might have suffered something." Chu Chimo was induced to shout suddenly, "What kind of blow could it be? Being abducted into a mountain must be a child bride like in the news report. No wonder she has such a bad reputation. If I marry her, my brothers will laugh at me. Mom, I see that she brings her child to the door to seek money, so she simply keeps the child and gives her a sum of money to pass it on." Chu Sichen listened quietly. Such a beautiful and flamboyant girl was kidnapped at the age of 10. Seeing how Chu Chimo disliked her, he became more and more upset, and suddenly said coldly, "The child may not be yours, first make a DNA." Lin Wanru said nervously, "The child looks a lot like Chimo, so I don't need the DNA. No. It has to be done." Chu Chimo became serious, "Where is the child? I'll take a sample and do it right away. What if the child belongs to someone else? I don't want to be the scumbag." Upstairs. Chu Sichen also stood up, someone who has always been busy with these nostalgic things, took a rare step, "I'll go with you." Lin Wanru swallowed nervously, but did not dare to stop her for fear of causing suspicion, so she could only follow behind the two brothers. Upstairs, Chu Tianyi and Chu Yu were looking at each other. Chu Tianyi looked at Chu Yu with scrutiny eyes. "This guy is wearing a small custom suit, a proper little gentleman. Shen Ruojing pays attention to the comfort of old age, so he likes to buy them home clothes, let him down." Chu Tianyi worried, "Will my father give me less of my inheritance?" Chu Yu's face was serious, but his eyes drifted to Chu Tianyi's head. "The curly hair of my sister's brother is too cute, right? I really want to slap it." Chu Xiaomeng hid in the corner, looked down at the book in her hand, and said silently in her heart, "Don't look at me, don't look at me." The door was pushed open when the three of them had their own thoughts. Chu Sichen walked in, glanced over Chu Xiaomeng, fell on Chu Tianyi, and said to the family doctor behind him, "Take his sample." Chu Tianyi,